today I want to talk to you about 8 differences between poor and rich people. Now, of course, you can ask, how do you find poor and rich? And obviously, I guess that's, really subjective, but I really want to focus conceptually about the difference between the mindsets of a poor mindset and a wealthy mindset, which obviously over time also reflects in their bank accounts, right? And the first one has to do with the priority of wealthy people to focus on building and growing their assets versus poor people's focus on having liabilities. And liabilities are things that are costing you more money. For example, a car, right? Even imagine you get a free car given to you, right? You're happy, you enjoy it, that's great. However, what you're gonna be needing is fuel to move the car around. That costs you money regularly. Then you're gonna need an insurance. Then the value of the car starts dropping. Then you're gonna have maintenance costs and so forth. So these are liabilities that actually cost you money over the long term. Now, granted, you could obviously resell the car and make some money from it, but overall the value over time depreciates versus an asset is something that you invest in that over time appreciates in value. And there are many different assets, right? It could be a building, it could be stock, it could be a company, it could also be a precious art piece, even some wine. Some people like to invest in fancy watches. So many different assets out there that you can invest in to grow over time. And as you can see over here, a great chart that I found online, it kind of reflects people's net worth and what they allocate their money towards. And you can see at the high end of the chart, your net worth is around $10,000, which, is sort of an entry towards growing your wealth. You see the composition of it is much different than if you move down to billionaires. And obviously in the beginning, most of your money is tied up in cash. You have some money sitting in your bank account. Maybe if you're lucky enough, you have a primary residence, that will take up a big part of your holdings, obviously. Then also in this case, an asset, right? The car. Well, technically it is an asset and a liability, depends how you look at it. But for some people, they said, I bought a fancy car and I can still sell it even though it dropped in value, but it's still some money, which is true, right? There is some value in a car. It's just not the smartest investment, at least in my eyes. You might have a retirement fund and some life insurance as well. But as you see, as your net worth grows, that percentage allocation completely shifts. And obviously it's not representative for every rich person, but in many cases, you see the blue line over here, which the poorer people don't have. And that's business interest. So that's basically the ownership that they have in a business, right? Either as a publicly listed company or even as a private company, right? If you're a majority shareholder of a very successful private company, well, obviously your net worth is going to be extremely high. And hopefully that company, in most cases, will also pay you some nice profits, right? Then, of course, you have more stocks and ETFs and other assets in your net worth. And I think that's super important. And one of the big differentiations of how you can really grow your net worth over time, it's not happening by keeping your money in the bank where it actually loses purchasing power to inflation. You really want to put it towards an asset that grows over time. And that's why I'm a big fan of investing. Obviously, I invest myself. I personally invest also in ETFs, Bitcoin, and real estate for that matter in order to grow that value long term. The next point has to do with delayed gratification. And that's a real powerful thing that I really enjoy and I kind of tend to do myself. And basically it means not to chase the shiny object, which you want to be having right now, right? You see something, some advertising and you want this, right? The latest phone, the latest gadget or some fashion item, whatever it is, you want to have it. But the difference here is that those wealthy people who can actually afford those things and buy them right away, they often have a delayed gratification, meaning they wait for things to play out and only then treat themselves, right? And it's again a mindset that you should be adopting with anything in life, right? It's the same with going to the gym, right? It's not that you go one time and then you can eat any burger and any junk food you want, but it's consistently going over time, staying disciplined and consistent that you start seeing success. And then, of course, once in a while you can treat yourself to a cheat meal or, take a couple of days off if you wanted to, but not in the beginning. And that's how too many people get it wrong. They start working hard on their business, on their health, on their project, anything in life really. And then I think they can treat themselves right away. And often that's not the best way to go about it. So really try to postpone that gratification, the fruit for your hard labor. And I do the same for myself. Whenever I want to buy something, I have this urge to buy something. What I do is I never go out and buy it right away, even though I have the money for it. But I will wait at least 3 days and kind of research everything online. And for example, gadgets, right? I will go on YouTube and watch every possible review, almost to a point that I feel I already have the gadget. And normally the same is true, right? When you buy anything, after a few days, that dopamine, that excitement wears off. Even a new car, after a while, it's just another car, right? And the same is true for me. So many times following that rule, I actually didn't want the item anymore and ended up not buying it. So it's not about saving money, it's just delaying that gratification for your work, for your inputs to a later stage, and that can really propel you forward and help you to achieve great results in any area of your life. The next point has to do, of course, with investing habits, because a lot of people, especially poor people, even though I really don't like the word poor, but let's say beginners who are not familiar with investing and general money practices, they pay everything they have to pay for their life, and only at the end of the month they think, okay, maybe I should invest some money. But then often it turns out that the month is still too long, they ran out of money, they try to get by to survive the last few days, and I think, okay, well, next month I should be really investing. And every month is just kind of on repeat and they never actually get to that. Versus wealthy people, or at least people who are really taking it serious to grow their wealth and invest into those assets, they pay themselves first. So as soon as you get your income, your profits, your dividends, whatever income comes to you, make sure you allocate a certain amount, ideally a fixed amount that grows over time, into your investments, and whatever your choice of investments are. Obviously, in the beginning, it might make sense to start investing into stocks or ETFs, whatever you choose to invest in, but allocate that first. And only then start paying for your living expenses, because that way you will be guaranteed to continue staying diligent and invested over the long term, rather than just leaving investment to chance. And that's exactly how the rich get richer, because they know the power of using their money, using it as leverage, and help them to generate more money from the money they already have. That's the kind of compound effect that you start seeing the more money you have. The next point has to do with stealth wealth. Basically, it's a saying of don't flaunt your wealth. When you think of rich people, you think of the guy driving a Lamborghini or living in the biggest suites in Dubai, flying first class around the world. And while of course there are people like that, and it's totally fine, right? None of that is any judgment from my side. But what I can see by observing some of those really ultra rich people, and even, obviously living in Dubai and having met quite a few ultra wealthy people myself, often those really, really rich people, they actually live under the radar, right? They don't flaunt their wealth around and show how rich they are, showing the biggest watches. They often dress very simply. And there are a lot of reasons for it, because A, they don't have to impress anyone. They know who they are. They know what they have in their net worth. They don't have to impress anyone purely through materialistic signs. And another reason, of course, you attract less attention, right? I mean, if you're running around with a big fat Rolex or other fancy watch in London or Paris, I mean, you better be careful with that, right? The same when you drive a red Ferrari in Berlin, for example. You better be very mindful of where you park your car, because people might just come around, scratch it, or see who's in there. And that's why I think really ultra rich people, they once again rather use that money to invest into assets that grow further wealth for them, rather than investing into materialistic things that lose value over time. And you see some of the richest people, they dress extremely simply. They wear a couple of shirts, t-shirts, jeans, and really simplify their life in many ways. Now, of course, they probably still have a private jet, but they don't post selfies every day flying private jet. It's just part of their lifestyle. But overall, they keep things simple. And rather than focusing on materialistic things, which too many poor people think that by buying designer dresses, which are absolutely outrageously overpriced, they impress other people because they can afford some expensive jewelry or a bag from some kind of designer. They make them rich in the process, so it's good for the designer, but for yourself often, you invest into things that lose value over time. I think that's a big differentiation, and something I can really recommend you if you're serious about growing your net worth. Really pay attention where your money goes towards. You want to allocate it towards assets that grow in value rather than materialistic things to impress people that don't really actually care about you. The next point has to do with continuous learning, and it's really incredible to see those ultra rich people who already achieved so much in life. They never give up on learning, because nobody ever knows everything, right? And that's very clear. We live in such a dynamic world. It's ever evolving. It changes so fast. And those ultra rich people, they continue to evolve with the times, right? They want to stay ahead of the curve. Otherwise, you fall behind. Just because something worked for the last 10, 20 years does not mean it will continue to work in the next 10, 20 years. So you have to continuously educate yourself, and that you can do through many different means, right? Obviously, in their circle, they converse with other people at their level. They're not going to watch TikTok videos to get smarter, but even that, you would be surprised. Some of them, they still might just do that to get a feel of what the culture is up to, and then maybe either capitalize it with a new business idea, because you want to keep in touch with what's happening. Even though you can't maybe relate if you're a multi-billionaire, right, with the young student, at the same time, if you can see what their problems are, what they're dealing with, how they're thinking, you can use that for your own advantage. And that's often what they're doing. They continue to educate themselves. Even for myself, when I think back at the times when I used to be a luxury hotel general manager, people think you should know it all, right? When we're in big meetings and, we had a question and they all look to me for the answer. And I very often said, I don't know, but let's find out. I think that's super, super powerful. Have an open mind, keep on learning, look for different opinions, and listen to people who are in the field, right? And that mindset approach really differentiates the wealthy from poorer people who really will argue with you and they think they know it all, even though, well, when you look at the bank account, clearly shows they may not know that much after all. And talking about continuous education, the fact that you're still here watching the video really shows me that you're taking the topic of investing and personal finance serious. And if you want even more deep dive into the topic, then why not check out the Smart Money Club? You find the link down in the description below. It's an amazing community of like-minded people where we talk about all things money, personal finance, and investing. We have weekly calls. You can reach out to me via DMs anytime. So I think it's a really cool community to help us maximize our money. And that brings me to the next point, which is about networking and relationships. Now, the saying is you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Now, I understand if you're just starting off your career, obviously you may not know multimillionaires or even billionaires, right? It's really difficult to get in touch with them. But at the same time, having such a network will really help you to achieve your goals much faster. I mean, the best example for that is the famous PayPal mafia, right? These were the people who used to work on PayPal. You see them over here. And since they left it, most of them did extremely well. They're still in touch. You have the founders of Tesla, LinkedIn, Palantir, SpaceX, Affirm, and many, many more coming out of this group of individuals. And they obviously stayed in touch. They push each other forward. And that's the power of having a strong network and relationships. If you're just hanging out with your local gamer friends, well, it might be fun for a while, but they're probably not going to elevate you to the next level or encourage you to invest into yourself, to develop yourself, to take a business risk. And that's why it's so important to reach out to people who are playing the game at a higher level than you do. And that's what I do as well myself. I really openly try to build my network, especially with more successful people, entrepreneurs, people who are really successful, other YouTubers, content creators. It's a much bigger audience than I have. And honestly, that's also one of the reasons why I have this YouTube channel, because as it grows, I'll be able to reach out to even more successful people in the future. I want to get them onto the channel as well, to interview them, learn from them, and also help you to benefit from that knowledge and the insight. And if you want to help me to achieve that, then please give it a like. That helps this video to be seen by more people, and that means a bigger audience, which helps me to get bigger guests on. The next point is pretty self-explanatory, but wealthy people often have a very entrepreneurial mindset. You hardly ever see billionaires who are employees, right? Well, they might be employees in their own company, but most of those super ultra rich people, they are founders of companies, or later on even become a major shareholder in other companies. And contrary to poorer people, they see opportunities everywhere. Take a show like Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, where a group of entrepreneurs pitches to rich people to get their money, to get invested and help them grow their business. And that's what I mean. They see the opportunity, and if they see it, they seize it, they use their money to make more money, right? Once again, use that as a leverage. Versus poor people, often they only focus on the problems, right? They read the news. Oh my God, you see what's happening. The world is about to end. Recession is starting. I heard this now for the last 2 years. Every time people ask me, but Kai, why you keep on investing? The recession will come very soon. Imagine if wealthy people thought like that. They would never make any investments. They would never take any risk, right? You have to see the opportunity rather than the threats. And I'll come to this in a second, but I think that's super important. Be opportunity focused, focus on what you can control rather than being controlled by other things that you will never be able to control. To really have a growth mindset, focus on building additional income streams, because too many poor people, they only have one income stream, that's their job, the 9 to 5. And then if they get fired or eventually the recession really comes, which it will come, right? That's a normal part of life. Recessions come and go. So imagine if they lose their job, well, all of a sudden they go from 100% income to 0 income, and that's really painful. Then of course they will not be able to invest, build up their assets, and you can just see that kind of domino effect kicking in there. So you want to make sure as soon as you start your job, have a side hustle, start having other income sources. And I made a couple of videos around this topic, but I think starting a side hustle to get additional income is super, super important. And you might eventually, fall in love with a side hustle and build it up as your main hustle that allows you to leave your job and start working on your own terms. And coming back to the chart over here, you see those wealthy people, it's mostly their business interests, their assets, right? It's not about the money in the bank account or the designer clothes that they have in their wardrobe where their wealth comes from, but from the various businesses and investments that they did into value appreciating assets over time. And the last point has to do with adaptability. Now, as I said earlier on, times are changing and we live in a really dynamic world. And a great example for this is Warren Buffett, right? He's a really conservative investor, one of the richest people on this earth, an amazing investor. I always look to get some inspiration. And he was very cautious investing into Apple. Many years he was really not into any kind of tech stocks, and he only invested into really more traditional companies. However, eventually he invested into Apple and it turned out to be one of his best investments, even though he was already way late to the party when it already increased quite a bit of value. And still, he made a lot of money on it, even though now he sold out quite a big chunk of his investments out of Apple, because I'm sure he's sitting now on a lot of cash and he will use that to invest into something new where he sees opportunities. So what I'm saying is, be adaptable. Don't have a fixed mindset that this is the way how I invest and that's how I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I mean, personally myself, I changed my investment style already quite a few times. I started off investing into some random stocks, then I went with P2P investing, then I was all obsessed with dividend shares until I realized ultimately what matters is the total return, and that matters rather than just the dividend part of it. And that's why now I went towards ETF investing into S&P 500 mostly. But you have to find what works for you, but at the same time keep an open mind. Coming back to the continuous education, right? If they see things changing in the markets or new opportunities, capitalize on that and adapt accordingly, right? Right now, if you're not embracing AI and really making it part of your daily life, I think eventually you're going to be left behind. It's not AI replacing people. I think it's people using AI going to be replacing people who are not using AI. So I think that's super powerful. So be adaptable, continue to learn. I think that will really give you a higher likelihood of keeping up with those wealthy people. Of course, there are even more points of differentiation between wealthy and poorer people, but ultimately I think following just some of those can really help you to step up and improve your net worth over time, rather than being in a rat race of life where you run from paycheck to paycheck and never seem to be able to grow your net worth or grow your assets. I think following some of those best practices from those wealthy people can be helpful for all of us, myself included. Now, personally, I'm far from being wealthy, but I'm working to get there over time and I'm making good progress. And if you want to see my portfolio and passive income, then you can check out this video over here next. As always, thanks a lot for watching, stay healthy, get wealthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!